Nah, sort of. There's a pluralization. It doesn't count.
There's no one called Edwards in real life.
Yeah.
Well, other than Jedwards, maybe.
I used to get. Back when I lived in Brighton. I had my hair sort of done in like a sort of faux hawk thing, which was all the rage if you remember back in the sort of
the least
2000s.
Surprising thing ever.
And I went to an amateur comedy show, and I don't know what this person had planned for their set, but they transitioned the whole thing to basically calling me Jedward, and I was just the laughing stock of the thing, which was really lovely.
And so you were basically the Adam Webster of Saturday.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I didn't have I didn't have a partner in crime there. There was no James Milner sat next to me, also looking crap. But no, it was just me getting embarrassed.
All right, welcome to episode 224. Jeez, 224. Bank holiday Monday for some. You two, Adam and Craig, will be celebrating your bank holiday next weekend.
Speaking of which, 224 is the formation we played.
It was a little bit, like. Yeah. Is this show about Adam's hairstyle tips? That is on our Patreon, Stephen.
It's on my OnlyFans. I'll send the link afterwards.
Just look in the bar. We'll make sure we get that added for future shows. There's been a lot going on in football this week. And before we even get to West Ham, I think there's a fair few things we could touch on outside of the world of Brighton and of Albion. One of them will hit real quickly because it's been kind of developing over the last 2 or 3 days. And it could be a pretty monumental move for the Premier League and the competition in the Premier League. Mo Salah to Saudi Arabia has emerged over the last couple of days. And it's worth talking about because that would be by far the biggest move from the Premier League and would also absolutely ruin Liverpool's chances of becoming a competitive team to challenge City this year, I would feel. Do you think that would happen? Do you think this is going to take place? Anyone?
My money is on yes. Money is on yes. It makes too much sense. It would be a record fee for the Saudi League incoming. So bust the Neymar one, which was 90 million euro or something. He just signed that new Liverpool contract for a lot of money. And I think he's at a point now where in an ideal world, you probably wouldn't have signed it for that. I just don't think Liverpool could have saved face by letting him just play out the contract. So they had to renew it. But I don't imagine the terms are what they ideally want from a financial standpoint. So in some ways, this might come along and be like this is fortunate for us. And then for the Saudi league, they get their a player that is from a nearby region, a Muslim representation that they can have for the league. And suddenly you turn around and you look and you've got, I don't know, the Premier League turns into a feeder club for the Saudi league at this point. But I think it works. I think Liverpool will be fortunate to do that. And I think it's a good move for the Saudi league too.
I think they'd be fine without him.
Yeah, they're good with 10 men anyway.
Yeah, as well. They can just get rid of him and not play another player. If this weekend's anything to go by.
I agree with Adam. I mean, what is he, early 30s? What is he, 30, 31?
Yeah.
31 now, yeah.
So if they come, I mean, they're going to have to come along with 150 million quid, something like that. That sort of region. If you get offered that, I mean, you're going to take it, aren't you, all day long, regardless of who it is. But I think they'd be fine without him with the players they've got coming back. Jota looks pretty good. At the weekend, Nunes is looking good. They've got the new Hungarian guy whose name I'm not gonna.
Soboslai.
Thank you. So I think they'd be fine. I think it will happen. I think Adam's absolutely right to have a kind of Muslim player going there. Look, there was an interview with Koulibaly who went out there and he said one of the biggest. He said, I'm not going to lie, money was a big motivating factor. But he said the other factor was actually moving to a Muslim country, being closer to Mecca and all of that. So I actually think it underestimate how much of a pull it will be for Muslim players to go to play in a big league. Well, what is going to become a big league with big money, in a region and a country that is predominantly based around their religion. Why wouldn't you go?
Yeah, I mean, Koulibaly also said that I think the money that he's got just on signing on fee is like building like a whole clinic in his village and stuff. Like he's just basically like modernizing the village he was born in like, just put it on fast forward. Like it's incredible the money these guys can put into it. Last thing on the Saudi League, hopefully the last thing. I hope we're not talking about the Saudi League next week with Mitoma off there or something. But in terms of this transfer window, well, that's not so bad.
Please.
Their transfer window deadline ends a week after the English one. If they want to enter the and the European one in general, right? Like if they want to enter the Champions League, which it looks like they're doing, and they want to become this big league in Europe and kind of in the sphere of European football, they're gonna have to get that in line, don't you think, Craig? Like I feel like they're gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if most teams just tell them to go stuff themselves after the window's closed.
Even if they don't, right? I think it's turning out to be a bigger problem than probably people realized, right? When this first Saudi stuff started, and it was like, right, we'll just throw loads of money at this. I don't think people would have expected the Salahs and the Neymars of the world to go. You're kind of expecting an MLS version too, kind of, but. No, it's a real problem. But I think in that respect, if they are going to start competing with European teams and be in those competitions, or at least compete alongside them, that needs to fall in line, right? You need to follow the same sort of guidelines. I think it could cause a problem this year. I reckon you've got a few people, you're dropped for 3 or 4 games. All of a sudden, you're not playing well. The season isn't going as expected 6 or 7 games in. I'll be half inclined to try and get a money move as well. So it can be a big problem.
But doesn't La Liga also have a staggered transfer window compared to the Premier League? Like I feel like this is, and that's never been a.
I think they're only a day or two though now.
Is it?
I think they've all come in line. Yeah, I think a lot of the European teams have.
Not that long ago though. I feel like, especially like the Turkish league, a bunch of other. There's always been a gap, and there's always been complaints about that, and then a hesitation from clubs to be like, we don't want to be in a position where we sell a player and we're unable to bring in a replacement. But I get that there'll be Saudi teams in the Champions League. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, because what are the governing bodies motivated by? Money. And what are the Saudis like? It's just, of course, it's going to happen.
How's it going to work with financial fair play? Do we reckon? They take that quite like being serious, like that competition takes financial fair play quite seriously. So if you're a Saudi team and you're going to enter, the Champions League, it's more difficult just to be like, we've just got loads of money. And it's like, well, where, it's a lot more difficult just to throw money at it. So I don't know whether their aim is that they're just going to basically front load their teams now with loads of unbelievable superstars. And then what they're going to have to do if they want to get into the Champions League is they're going to have to tailor it off slightly to actually make it stack up revenue wise.
They're just going to do what Man City did.
I think it's probably similar to what Steven's saying in the chat as well. They are essentially pulling a Todd Bowley, but as an entire nation state, right? Like they are probably doing exactly what you just said. They're front loading everything so that when they get in, like these things have already started to amortize and it's not a problem. He's trying to do the same thing where he's signing these players up for all this money now, because in a year's time, when he hopes that they qualify for the Champions League, the horse has bolted. It's not going to be as much of a problem. He's got half of his team nailed down to 25-year contracts. Like it's sorted, right? Like I think that's his hope anyway. Another topic of conversation, which is a much bigger one for really the entire integrity of English football, is Mike Dean, ever the star of the show. Absolutely cannot stand not refereeing week in and week out. So he's obviously having to go on to every outlet possible to be the center of attention. And he has admitted on Simon Jordan's podcast that they essentially decide whether they want to call VAR calls based on whether they're mates with the other referee, whether they fancy making it a dramatic decision. He said to Anthony Taylor afterwards in a Chelsea-Tottenham game, I just didn't want, this is a quote, I just didn't want to send you to the screen after what has gone on in the game. I didn't want to send him up because he is a mate as well as a referee. And I think I didn't want to send him up because I didn't want any more grief for him than he's already had. He's also said that he doesn't want to go too far in terms of making changes to VAR. And PGMOL have come out and said that he's essentially lying through his teeth. This definitely doesn't happen. It's all about making sure that we're rectifying the clear and obvious errors. And this has absolutely never happened. We strongly refute any suggestion that VAR does never intervene for whatever reason when they've identified a clear and obvious error. Pretty mind-blowing stuff here from Mike Dean. Craig, what's your opinion on this? Because it feels like some people are just waving it. It feels like we've become so apathetic to this because it's so constant. And then other people are just mind-blown in the way that I am, that this has come out and no one seems to be reacting as heavily as I thought they would.
Yeah. And I agree with you completely. I think it's mind-numbing, isn't it? That Mike Dean's just going to Mike Dean, isn't he? And like that's what he's doing here. But if you really lay out the ramifications and what's actually happening there, and that knowing that this being an isolated case that one person has spoken about is absolutely not the case, is it? This has happened much more than this one isolated incident that Mike Dean has decided to talk about. So it's sort of, how deep does that go? Is that every game that you just don't fancy doing your job right? And actually, I'm just going to protect my friend in not doing his job, knowing full well he gets very handsomely compensated for it. Like, what is the point of even having? And yeah, I'm as baffled as you are, as many people are. I also agree with you to an extent that we've just become sort of apathetic or numb to it because it happens so often, because it's so normal now, or sort of expected at this point. I just don't think we should settle for it. Just a lot of people are saying that's how it is now, and sort of becoming a little bit apathetic to it. And we shouldn't. It should be rightly called out, and it needs to be addressed.
Robin, what do you think should be taken from this approach? Right, like, I think the worst possible approach you could take to something like this coming out is a pretty kind of dictatorial approach of "it didn't happen, shut up, you're lying." Which is inevitably what PGMO have decided to go with, because why?
I mean, what's
the approach here?
I mean, one, they can't just be like, well, he's come out and said it. So I mean, it's a really bizarre statement for both people to make. I mean, there's three pretty easy fixes for this. One, you don't have referees from the standard refereeing pool as VAR. You train a specific group of people to do it. That's pretty easy to do. People that know the technology, you teach them the rules if they're not football fans, but they don't have to be from that same pool. That would be number one. Number two, you let fans and broadcasters hear the conversation that's going on between the ref and the VAR, as you hear in basically every other sport that has some kind of video intervention. Rugby, cricket, you hear the back and forth, why they're coming to that decision, etc., etc. And three, you do what they've just started to do in France, which is the referee comes out after the game and is interviewed and has to explain why he made certain decisions at certain points. You do those three, and it's pretty difficult to hide away from what's going on. I mean, particularly if you're hearing the conversation between the two officials, it's pretty difficult, no, and impossible to cover up. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty difficult to not come to the vaguely correct decision if you're hearing, if it's being heard out loud. So those three things, which don't really cost much money or take much effort to do, would make a dramatic improvement overnight, in my view.
Adam, do you see any of those things taking place?
Probably not. I'll come out in solidarity for Mike Dean. I think he's great. I agree with what he did. I'm actually going to go to my local church and go on hunger strike to come out in support of him. If you aren't familiar with that reference, go look into the mother of the Spanish
Football Federation
is doing. That's another one. Let's not talk about that.
We're not touching on that today.
Not going on that.
Just too far.
Yeah. I don't know. The problem is everyone's stupid. So you even had yesterday where seemingly there was a good swathe of people that thought that Van Dijk's challenge wasn't a red card. And maybe you guys are some of them, but I'm going to classify everyone that thought it wasn't a red card as stupid, because it was the most clear and obvious red card I think I've seen in recent history. Van Dijk should be banned for additional games because of the way he behaved with the referee as well. He's incredibly abusive. He was up in his face. He was swearing at him. And people were even non-Liverpool fans, oh no, it shouldn't have been said. He was the last man. And beside the point, there's just so many stupid, baffling decisions. But the problem is, while we've got people that either have outside influences, they're mates with people, they're compensating in a certain way, they've got reputations to uphold, whatever it is, there's some kind of level of bias. It's all dumb. For me, the more that we can ultimately sort of computerize and people won't like this, I think the better. Because tell you, no one complains about anymore in tennis is that thing that, what's the thing called? Eagle eye, Hawkeye, some bird eye. No one complains about that anymore. When that first came in, it was uproar. Let's get a human to. Well, of course, it's way more accurate. But right now, there's no fail-safe. The fail-safe to a stupid referee is another stupid referee in a room. It just doesn't work.
Well, I mean, you can go further, right? And goal line technology, when it first came in, was how do we know it's going to be reliable? Because it's in the ball, is it going to be there was all sorts of questions. How do you make sure it's turned on? The simple thing is if you're Aston Villa, you don't turn it on and then you stay up.
They would have probably given a goal against that shot against Alisson yesterday if we didn't have goal line technology, because I thought it was in.
Well, that's the thing, right? And everybody
safe.
At the time was fuming at the time. Linesmen are going to be defunct, and now they basically are, to be fair, after VAR. But they are now. Everybody just immediately looks to the referee to see what his watch says and says, "Cool," one way or another, yes or no. No one questions goal line technology anymore, as long as it's on. I feel like that's something that is really the proof's in the pudding, right? We've seen it, we know it's working. We've been given proof now. There's no reason to doubt it. We're happy with it.
Do you think that, I think the main thing that comes down as well is how the interpretation of rules seems to depend on a level of subjectivity versus objectivity. And that seems to be the main problem, especially when you get into this weird area. And I hate this thing that they talk about where it's well, we won't change it unless the referee made a clear and obvious. No, if it's wrong, just change it. Why are you trying to if it was wrong, call it modify the decision?
You're right. The biggest thing that I've always backed since the beginning, and I've probably bored Josh to death with this at some point previously, so apologies, Josh, for her. The biggest thing you've hit onto, Adam, which is what I totally agree with, is the subjectivity of it. So I'll give a specific example is shirt pulls, right? You'll get some referees who will always give that, or more often than not, will give those shirt pulls as a penalty. And I know a few seasons ago we went through there was a spate of them being given in a certain run of the season. But you'll get some referees who will give that. If they see an obvious shirt pull, they'll give it. And you'll get other referees who can basically have an attacker have his shirt pulled off his back by a centre half and they won't give it. So then if you're then having, it then depends who's on the VAR then. So if that decision is being looked at, if it depends on that referee's personal opinion.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a right or a wrong decision. So yeah, that's the bit I've always struggled with, which is basically, as you've said, our fail-safe for a referee not seeing something is falling back to another referee's opinion of the same decision. So you're right, Josh. I mean, I think what you'd go back to is, I think no one would have a real issue if you said, right, we're just going to have goal line technology because that's in the watch, and we're going to have, semi-automated or automated offsides, because everything else is subjective. Everything around penalties, and to an extent red cards as well, actually. Anything around penalties and red cards is deeply subjective.
Was this just a big setup to talk about how we got screwed over with the penalty decision? And
that's what I was building up.
Is this what this was?
It's gonna end on that, because I mean that's an interesting one. You're right, because the shoulder barge, if we're talking about Estepinion's one, the shoulder barge is something that, like kind of tackles that if you went back 10 or 15 years ago wouldn't be a yellow card, but these days are a straight red. shoulder barge is something which has become it's become refereed in a different way compared to how it was 10 or 15 years ago. It was that decision that was given or not given. That was a decision from 10 or 15 years ago, not a decision how it's normally refereed now. So that's a perfect example of you'd get one. I mean, they even said on the commentary, whoever was co-commentating on Sky Sports said that is a challenge that you've seen given quite a lot, was basically what, that was the comment. And that sentence sums it up. A decision that you've seen given quite a lot. It's like, well, surely it should be given 100% of the time, or 0% of the time. That, in a sense, that is the microcosm of subjectivity, and that's why it's a nonsense to have that.
Thank you for transitioning us on to Brighton and Hove Albion after 20 minutes. Robin, I appreciate you.
Oh, what is this a Brighton pod?
Yeah. Funnily enough, we are still here to talk about Brighton and Hove Albion, so let's do it. We've been putting this off, really, haven't we? Let's be fair, for 20 minutes, because it was basically Everton light from last year, so it wasn't the best time in the world. Let's talk starting 11, because I have a question immediately to ask about this one. 2 changes to the lineup. Obviously, Enciso is out hurt now up until Christmas, which is something I was going to touch on earlier, but we've just gone way off kilter with lots of different conversations, so we'll talk about him later. But Ferguson in the side at long last, in my opinion. I've been hoping we'd be starting Evan Ferguson for a while. He starts, and the interesting one here is Verbruggen in. Bart starts. Jason Steele to the bench after 2 4-1 wins in a row. Jason Steele is dropped to the bench. Now, De Zerbi has said very clearly that he wanted to operate very much like a 50-50 goalkeeper role here. I think we all assumed that meant all cup competitions would be one person's, all Premier League would be the other. And if and when he decided to swap that would be fair enough. Craig, how are you feeling about the idea that actually it's just going to be whenever he fancies playing each goalkeeper on a whim?
Yeah, I don't know. If there's method behind the madness, then sure, I'll be convinced. But if it's just a coin toss for each game, then it's kind of funny. But I don't know. I'm sure we'll be able to spot a pattern at some point as to what kind of teams we're playing against or however. But we're 3 games in. I have no idea. But we have 2 competent goalkeepers that we can choose from, and that makes me happy regardless. If you were switching one with what is clearly a backup goalkeeper, then I'd feel less inclined to say that. But I feel like we have 2 solid options. I'm not really too fussed who plays at the moment until I have a reason to say otherwise. So it was good to see him get a start. He obviously didn't have the best day, but he's there and he looks calm.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. And let's get straight down to the horrible part of the show, because the stats look great. 25 shots, 10 on target, 78% possession, 89% pass accuracy, 17 corners to therefore. We basically, if you look at the numbers, which is what we've said a bunch of times, that we are like the worst team in the world for these eye tests / stats, because we just don't match them a lot of the time. Under Potter and now again under De Zerbi, we're struggling sometimes. We look like a team that should have put 8 past them, and yet we were beaten 3-1. Let's talk about where all 3 of those goals came from, and that is our right-hand side, with James Milner at right back for his 3rd game in a row, and Adam Webster. Olive Footy on Twitter made a very interesting thread. We Are Brighton highlighted it, and talked about what they view as Brighton's Achilles heel. And that's our rest defense. So anything these matches have in common, they list a bunch of losses: West Ham, City, Everton, Forest, Spurs, the draw against Brentford, City, of course, a couple of times last year as well. All of those matches, they believe have one common denominator, and that is that Brighton face a tall and or strong striker. Something we have talked about ad nauseum, mainly around Mitrovic and Ivan Toney. They also obviously list a couple of others as well: Harry Kane, Erling Haaland, Calvert-Lewin. I don't know, the Forest striker, Antonio, of course, and Bamford. In those 11 matches against Brighton, these 8 strikers combined together for a total of 10 goals and 4 assists. Rest defense refers to the attacking team set up for smooth counter pressing in defense after losing the ball. A strong resting defense structure enables instant pressure on opponents upon regaining possession, reflecting efficient attacking and preparedness for turnovers. So essentially, they are in good natural resting positions as and when the attacking team get a hold of the ball to then counter that, stop them at the base of it, really, or transition backwards and defend well on the counter attack. An attacker with notable physical strength has the ability to outmuscle a vulnerable rest defense by leveraging his body to protect the ball, fend off defenders, and establish room for himself or his teammates to achieve goal-scoring opportunities. They've got some really good information on here. I highly recommend looking at it because it's pretty damning just how exposed we are on that rest defense and just how much it's going to hurt losing Caicedo as to how important he was at helping us transition that rest defense. We have no out-and-out right back. James Milner is stepping in. James Milner and Adam Webster this week. And we have talked about Estepinian being left wide open in these situations at times, by the way, as well. And his stats are not the most beautiful to read when you're looking at that thread. But Milner and Webster especially, it's some really, really scary numbers and reading as to how unprepared they are as a duo. And they have been torn apart yesterday or the day before. Adam, you were talking about a monologue on our right side of defense. So I'll let you lead off from here. But how much of a concern is this going to be as we move forward with 4.5 days left of the transfer window, knowing that we play Newcastle United next and Manchester United after that? How vital is a new right back to this team? And at what point do we believe Adam Webster is past what we definitely saw as best at one point?
Yeah, Webster's been like this for a while, hasn't he? Where he's had, because I think it was either the last game or the game before where maybe he didn't start all of them, but I was impressed with him. I thought it was really solid. Maybe it was the game against Wolves. Someone correct me there if he even didn't play. But then he has a stinker. And I know everything you said there about whatever that Twitter account called it, rest defense, all that kind of stuff. Sure, that's probably all right. But we lost yesterday because we couldn't bloody create chances properly and because Adam Webster was terrible and James Milner can't run. So, yeah, all said and done, that's why we lost. You know, when you look at what was our possession for yesterday? You probably got this in front of you. Something obscene, right? Not yesterday, whenever we played.
Yeah, 78%.
78%. Yeah, West Ham's XG was 3 and ours was 1.5. This was quintessential potable, and really, it was De Zerbi for me in this one. Completely read it wrong to begin with. I don't mind about who you put in the positions for Bruggen. He wasn't a fault for any of that stuff. Like it didn't matter. Again, I feel bad for him. The poor guy. Every time he seems to be thrown onto something, he gets screwed over by bad defending for us. It was the same in one of the preseason games that he played in. And I also, De Zerbi seemed to leave changes quite late as well when you can see it wasn't happening. It wasn't working. Webster and Milner do not make a speedy pairing. I don't think I need to, that's not shocking for anyone to hear, but I don't understand how, I know he's new, but how bad is Igor if he can't play? Like if I'm watching Webster yesterday, I just get rid of it, take him off. I want him off after the first couple of hiccups. Bring Igor on, move Dunk to the right side and play Igor as left centre back. I've got no worries about Dunk being on the right centre back side, obviously, and he can make up for the deficiencies in Milner's game. I also never want to see Milner at right back again. I know he's not the ultimate solution here, but Veltman's not bad at right back. Milner is bad at right back. He leaves too much space in behind. And I think tactically, there's I don't know if you guys follow Premier League Panel. There's some on Twitter, Premier League Panel, basically looked at some sort of breakouts from how we played West Ham this game compared to last season. And basically what we did this time around was went really narrow and tight with our fullbacks. So Estupinian and Milner would come inside. And as you kind of hinted at, we would then leave these gaps out wide. Whereas last season, they stayed out at the side, and then we brought another player slightly deeper, and the link-up play was a lot easier for us. And we were able to create chances. All that Moyes had to tell his team to do here was, okay, well, wait for these guys to track inside from a wing-back standpoint. Then there's these massive gaps. And you saw that with the first goal. Ward-Prowse just shanked the ball. It wasn't some like, oh my God, James Ward-Prowse is the next coming. He basically just like hit a ball with the outside of his foot that he was just planning to hit into space. Webster just like can't play football. And then with the left, it was just Mikel Antonio who just danced around the defenders, and then we couldn't like block the ball. This wasn't like, it was no tactical masterclass from Moyes. It was get everyone behind the ball and kick the ball into space. And it worked over and over again. We just couldn't create any chances. So I know, I will shut up, but I know that Milner and Webster are the main problem here. They're the ones that are going to get all the abuse. But I tell you what, I never want to see again. I don't want to see Welbeck and Ferguson in the same starting 11 again, because the creativity properly isn't there. Mitoma we left on an island as well because of how narrow we went with the fullbacks. So the West Ham right back could just sit back. March had to also come deep because he knows he has to make up for Milner. It was just a really, really bad day all around. Yeah,
not ideal. And of course, James Ward-Prowse scores because why wouldn't he? But what do we make of the penalty calls in general? Do you think they were, Robin? I know you talked about it a little bit before. It's like
the first
it was
one,
subjective calls, but
the
what do you
first
think?
one isn't the handball one's not a penalty for me because the way that he's falling, the way the defender's falling, he literally cannot move his body out. Like people said, oh, Dunk had one given against him against Luton. That Dunk one for me is slightly different because he's not falling to the ground. The way that defender was the way he was heading to the ground, I can't see what else he can do in that position. So the first one I wouldn't have given it as a penalty. And as I always do in these situations, I think if that was given against us, how would I feel? I'd be fuming. It's not a penalty. The Estepinian one, as I've talked about, I thought that was a pretty nailed on penalty. There's a shoulder barge and then there's a shoulder barge. And, that was a clear penalty for me. Just to build on what Adam said in terms of Ferguson and Welbeck, I totally agree. I mean, when João Pedro came on, that was when we suddenly looked like, okay, we might actually have a chance here. And, were it not for the West Ham keeper, we could have come out with a 3-3 draw there.
He was immense, wasn't he?
He really was. So yeah, I think that was a useful sort of another example of we need João Pedro in from the start. And I'm not just saying that with my fantasy league manager's hat on, but I thought we looked pretty dangerous in the last half an hour. Probably to an extent because West Ham could sit off slightly, but I didn't think if you take out the right side issue that Adam's talked about, I didn't think we were dreadful the rest of it. This was one of those days where, similar to the Everton game, actually, Pickford had a blinder in that one. We lost 4-1, but actually that was another game where we could have come out with a 4-4 draw were it not for Pickford. So it's fine. I mean, West Ham are very, very good on the counter attack. And they were really clinical and they took their chances. Antonio on his day is one of the most difficult centre forwards to defend against in the Premier League. Bowen's great on the counter attack. Lucas Paqueta, when he's not getting dubious yellow cards, can put the ball on a kind of on a pinhead from anywhere. So I thought they took their chances really well, but I'm not too disheartened about it because I think it's come at a useful time, which is to show that we've got whatever it is 5 days of the window left. And if you want a demonstration of why we need a right back, if you were to set something up to go, we need to make a point here, you couldn't have set up anything better or worse, depending on how you want to phrase it, to put that in the shop window. So I'm not...
Deserby 4D chess. So you saying he set this all up to get some more leverage with Barber and Bloom? He's like, put these idiots out there. I need a right back.
But yeah, I mean, I think I don't think we actually played. Don't think we played that badly. It's just one of those sort of off days. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Milner is, I think he's got a really important role to play. And I think what we all said in the pre-season episode is we thought he was going to come on and do a version of the Lallana kind of, finisher role for the last 15, 20 minutes of a game. I don't think any of us saw him being a starter, let alone a starting right back, for the first 3 games. And I think Adam picked it up, which is his positioning, because, he is, if I look at it, people go, oh, if he's not going to get football at right back, where's he going to play? And you go, well, to me, he is that sort of holding midfielder at this point in his career. And you look at his positioning, he naturally drifts infield. You'll see him in that kind of holding midfield role, even when he's supposed to be a starting right back. So you're right. He just left so much space behind him because he kept getting caught again and again and again. He's obviously playing. He's doing the job that the manager's telling him to do. And yeah, it's a curious one about Veltman, because I've got no concerns about Veltman playing right back whatsoever. I mean, we talked about in one of the episodes, the Palace game at the Amex last season, he had Zaha in his pocket for the entire game playing right back. So I've got no concerns. It's just, I find it curious that Milner is consistently being picked ahead of Veltman for a position that we know Veltman is comfortable playing in.
And got an assistant this weekend. And Adam, you talked about yesterday to get some facts or like some ideas around like the Milner stuff, because we're anticipating some people would get upset. And there's already a bit of ruckus going on in the Albion atmosphere about people's opinions on players. And there's one thing that really stood out to me, and I thought it at the time, but we were riding on such a high, I thought, I'm not going to worry about it too much. It'll work itself out. And now I look back at it in the last 3 games goggles instead of just game 1 goggles. Milner was caught out consistently against Luton Town. And I didn't realize just how important Van Hecke was at covering him in his mistakes. Now I'm thinking back on it, like it was very apparent as to how important Van Hecke was covering his mistakes. And I now sit here and think, I wonder how that game would have gone if Webster started there instead. And then that makes me feel really worried about what that Luton result would have been. And that is a worrying sign in and of itself, I think. Craig, Newcastle United next. Anthony Gordon, who has started his season on an absolute blinder at left wing, by the way. Everyone was kind of laughing at that signing last year. I think all of us included, to be fair, because he looked dusted, like he looked bad. Absolutely started on fire this year. He's flying. Starting at left wing, Joe Linton behind him, our friend Dan Burn not at left back, which is definitely a cause for concern for them. Newcastle fans are not happy that he's still playing left back for them. But their left side, barring their left back, is going to be a very dangerous combination and has been already this season for everyone that played. What do you want that back 4 to look like? Goalkeeper, I think we've established that whoever is in goal, we're quite fine with. But in terms of that back 4, with the exception of Estepinian obviously starting on the left, what do you want that to look like against Newcastle that you think gives us the best chance to? But what's our best back 4, basically? What back 4 do you have the most faith in right now?
Yeah, it has to include Veltman, really. And I think I just want to build on the whole Luton Wolves and the Saturday's game, right? Is that all 3 of those have been closer than what it says on the scoreline. Every single one, right? Where you brought up the Luton one, where that could have been a very different game. you're sort of 2-1 up, squeaky bum time, that sort of stuff. Like, it very easily could have changed. The Wolves one as well, and the West Ham game as well, right? You sort of finished some of those chances, 10 shots on target. Areola did well, whatever, but a lot were straight at him. Could have been a very different result. But the fact remains is that we're still defensively quite fragile. And yeah, I'm not going to sound like a broken record on this pod, but Milner hasn't exactly been a shining light. So I need Veltman in at right back in order to feel comfortable, right? If Veltman is there is less pressure on Webster to do what he needs to do. We know that Webster is very good at progressive yards. He's very good at passing. He's very good at those sort of very specific areas, but only if you can focus on them. If he's too busy tracking back and he's too busy on the back foot, and he ends up making a mistake like he did on Saturday as well. There's errors in his game. And when you've got a right centre-back and a right back, both that can be plagued with errors throughout a game, you will get punished. Webster is Veltman, is Mr. Consistent for me. Very rarely makes a mistake when he's on form. If Veltman starts, I don't care if it's Webster or Van Hecker there. But that's my opinion. Obviously, people will feel very different. But that's it for me. And I also like Adam's idea of switching Dunk to right centre back as well to cover whoever is going to be at that right back, since we desperately need that, right? So that's where I am in terms of the best back four. Webster, Van Hecker aside, it has to be Veltman, Dunk, and Estepinian for me.
No Igor talk.
Yeah, I'll have an Igor.
Just because you've not seen him.
Yeah. I sort of I don't know what he brings or what that looks like. So until I can watch him and take some serious minutes, then I'll reserve judgment.
You know what was funny? For the third goal, which is horrible to say, isn't it? They had switched. Dunk and Webster had switched, and then Antonio was coming over on our left-hand side, and he just absolutely murked Webster back to goal. Just went, juked him out of the way, and then I will take the blame here because I was in Jamaica at the time of this game, and so of course Mikel Antonio was going to score. But yeah, he's Jamaican. The funny part though as well outside of that is it's not really humorous, but like as you hinted at earlier, Estepinian was awful. Estepinian was at fault in 2/3 of these goals, especially egregious in the second one if you go and watch it back. The first one was a comedy of errors, right? And I don't know if we're intending to go and specifically go through the goals with a fine-tooth comb, but we talked about that. Webster made the mistake, right? But we had 4 players in the box that should have marked James Ward-Prowse, and none of them could mark him. It was 1-on-1 on the wing with Anto once Webster went down. 4 players, and James Ward-Prowse just was able to just get a clean hit on it. And the second goal,
it's James Ward-Prowse against Brighton. It's
it was going to happen.
You can't stop it. Like
the second was, I think, our most embarrassing goal by a country mile, which is funny to say given that Webster fell on his ass on the first one. But it was a through ball, and the players were just trotting back. There was a lot of people having got Billy Gilmore for not sprinting back as fast as he could, but he was marking. I actually don't think he was fully at fault here. Like, he was marking the other guy. I can't remember who it was. Estepinian was ball watching the hell out of it. And at the back post, you just had the runner come. It was Bowen, right? He completely ignored Bowen. So he joined Gilmore, marking the other guy in the middle that the ball was never going to. And Bowen's just sat at the back post. Horrible defending from him. And yeah, the third, we've also talked about Webster being bad. But yeah, Estepinian was not good today. So as much shade as we want to throw at Milner and Webster, Purvis was very much at fault. But again, it's the system. He was pushed up and he wasn't tracking back well enough.
I think I'm going to go ahead and throw out the controversial opinion after 3 games of football this year. And
sack De Zerbi
towards the end of last year. Yeah, can you imagine? Just his translator. Just sack his translator. Let him do it all in like Pictionary tactics.
We should clip this and get some money for Milan. Go on.
No, so after what I've seen and looking at the Premier League these days, And taking into account that commentary on Sky pretty much nailed it of the re-emergence of how important a number 9 is becoming. Robin, I don't know if you remember them talking about how important like a number 9 has suddenly become again, and how big Ferguson can be in the Premier League, and a lot of teams relying on them. These 3 games to me has absolutely confirmed that Van Hecker is above Webster in my pecking order now. Like, absolutely. Igor is the guy that's, I don't know what the hell he is. Same as Craig. Like, I fully agree. Until I watch 90 minutes of football, bare minimum, I can't form any opinion on him because preseason he didn't even do anything, right? Like, so for me though, like, we are going to be facing either Isak or Wilson next week, or both. And I will feel a lot better about the guy that kept Erling Haaland in his pocket as opposed to the guy that got thrown to the floor like a child by Erling Haaland earlier in the season. Because Wilson is a lot better with his back to goal than Antonio is on his day, and Webster will get bodied badly. Like, to me, like, I would be starting Van Hecker next week, like, unless De Zerbi wants to go for Igor. If he wants to go for Igor, sound like, who knows? Like, who cares? Like, like, we don't know who the hell he is or what he's going to do. But for me, like, on that depth chart these days, like, if we're talking about that centre back depth chart, like, Van Hecker is well and above Webster these days. He's too injury prone. He's too inconsistent. He's too old compared to what we've got going on now. Like, to me, like, I know it's a controversial take, but like, for me,
it's not.
Webster's.
I don't think it is. I mean, I've got to go. I've got to go in a minute, so I want to leave you on the on sort of agreeing with your bombshell. I mean, I've said for a very long time, since early days of De Zerbi, actually, that Webster is probably the only player in the squad who actually looked better in Potter's system than he does in De Zerbi's.
I think you said that last week as well, didn't you?
Virtually probably. It sounds like my level of intelligent insight. So yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, he is. Virtually every other player De Zerbi has improved. But yeah, Webster is just, I think he's not what we need in the De Zerbi system. So I'm agree with you. I'll have Van Hecker next week without a doubt. Having said that, his performance at Newcastle away last season, I know no one had a particularly stellar game in that one. That was a little bit of a concern, but we'll have to see. But yeah,
it was also a bit of a disaster.
I'll leave you on that.
To be fair. Yeah, and we're going to get on to the optimistic stuff now, which I'm sure Robin will be delighted to have missed. So we've talked about the 3 goals ad nauseum. We've talked about what that back line looks like. Adam is furiously gesturing. He wants.
Well, I know that. I think Craig had something to say. I've still got more negativity.
I wanted
more for you, Adam.
I wanted to. Well, I'm going to back up Adam's one and loophole this. Ferguson and Welbeck are way too similar to play together, and it doesn't work. I think I completely agree with you on that. I think from an attacking perspective, Adam got it spot on. I want Ferguson or Welbeck starting, and I want João Pedro or Enciso at 10. And that needs to happen to make it fluid, right? And that was again for the lineups was, why isn't João Pedro playing? Right? It just immediately was like, well, if Enciso's not going to be at the 10, it has to be João Pedro, right? And that was something that was a little bit missing. Last bit, completely agree. At halftime, should have made changes. Everyone can see it now, like clear as day. Don't know why we waited. 2 more goals go in, and then we changed something. That was poor. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. I can sit on a podcast and I can criticize world-class managers all that I want. But I really did think João Pedro on at halftime, we probably get a result, right?
Good chance, yeah.
This isn't negative, by the way, but I don't agree with the Van Hecker thing. We're 1-2 podcasts away from basically saying I don't know if Van Hecker's up to this level. And now we're like one bad game from Webster. We're like, bring Van Hecker back. He's our saviour. I don't think either of them are the answer.
I don't think they are either, to be fair.
You imagine our surprise or just borderline shock when he signed a new 2-year deal. And now we're sort of 3 game weeks in going, yeah, get him in it.
Yeah, please. Right, we always said he was amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, we don't know who Igor is, but I don't know there's not enough utterings and stuff under the surface at the moment. It seems like Baliba, at time of recording, Baliba is coming in as his medical is supposedly tomorrow, so Tuesday the 29th. So that'll be the Caicedo replacement in quotation marks. But I've not really heard much in the last few days on a right back, and I wouldn't be shocked if there was some more centre back movement, unless you bring in a right back. It frees up the ability to, let's not forget, play Veltman at centre back, which is actually his position. So that's it. That's another one. You've got options as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're offering me Van Hecker, Webster, or Veltman at centre half next to Dunk, I'm picking Veltman 100 times out of 100 in any game. By the way, like I'm stating the Van Hecker Webster opinion with the prerequisite that I am assuming Veltman will be right back, because, like you, Craig, like that's the guy that we need to be starting there. Let's talk positivity. And this feels like a bit of a wind up given everything that's going on with like drama on Twitter at the minute. But let's take a moment to hail Pascal Gross becoming our leading Premier League goal scorer, assisted by Joel Veltman, by the way, almost as soon as he came on. I've never seen a man hit a ball low and what looks to be quite timidly and score so many goals, by the way, as Pascal Gross. He does it all the time. Like, you just like, he threads this needle through the defense, low, like driven, and it doesn't even look like it's going very fast. But like the keeper has no chance. The defenders can't stop it because it's just, I don't know how he does it. He played at central midfield. He's played in centre mid every game this season. According to Who Scored, he was our man of the match by a massive distance. Maybe because he was the guy that basically dominated every single stat line with more key passes, shots on target, like 140 odd touches. Like, the guy was just like the guy in terms of our attacking outlet. He's now our top Premier League goal scorer. At what point, like, do we just like thank this dude for being like what, like £3 million? Like, I just think we need to take a little bit of time to just wax lyrical about the contribution Pascal Gross has given us in the past 5 Premier League seasons now. 3 different managers, 3 totally different styles of play. Like, I just can't think of many players in any other team in the Premier League that seems to be able to transition to any system and be as effective as this guy, wherever you ask him to play. And I just think he deserves every piece of credit you could give him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he just brings so much, doesn't he? Obviously, his football IQ, like it even sort of the gross turns, threading the needle with like the shots that he takes, like just how important he is to this team. And he's just been so consistent as well in contributing and being able to play where he needed to play and still doing an effective job. Yeah, he's such a good player. He really is. And I would call him our clutch player for I guess more American sports than anything else, right? Is if I could count on one player to come up with the goods in a very high pressure situation, Gross is at the top, right? If we need a goal, if we need something, if we need one good ball in, or we need one surefire sort of bit of skill or bit of luck or whatever, he creates it. And he's the guy that makes things happen when it isn't going our way, right? You're 3-0 down. Of course, it's Gross that takes the ball and just drives it into the bottom corner just to get us up and running again. He's that guy. And it's also criminal that he has not ever had a Germany call up. I don't understand it whatsoever. He's behind Kevin De Bruyne in chance created. He's like in the entire Premier League for the entire time that he's been playing in the Premier League. It doesn't make sense to me, but yeah, wonderful player.
He tried that shot 4 times before he scored it as well, by the way. Like and he came quite again. Areola was really, really, really good. But he had a few bangs at that. I really liked his comment after the game as well, where someone asked him about the record. He was like, I'm not thinking about that right now. we weren't good enough, and I'm more frustrated about that. I'm ad-libbing that, but it's something to that effect, and I think that just shows his character. But yeah, he is the clutch player. Unfortunately, yesterday De Zerbi was driving an automatic, so
Jesus, we are cutting that.
yeah, well,
I'm
no,
gonna go
keep
in.
going, but that one we keep
That's
in.
not in.
Yeah, that's got to stay in.
Outrageous. Stephen in the chat said that Gross is Brighton's Beckham. Initially, I was outraged at that choice of comparison, and then I thought about it for a couple of seconds while you guys were talking, and I thought it's not as mental as it seems, really.
Beckham couldn't pull off a turn without breaking his ankles like that.
But when I think about it, he's honestly not as far off as I felt like he was on my initial reaction. So fair play, Stephen. Like, it's actually a half decent call because of what he offers. Yeah, I can see it. James as well in the chat, not overly concerned, to be honest, I assume, with the West Ham game in general. He just has that faith that the fact that our attackers will exploit their mistakes as much as we will exploit ours. And James believes that Belieber, he's not a believer in Belieber. He thinks that he might need a loan out to get him up to speed.
Heathen. He's not a believer.
He's not a believer. What a take, James.
It's not a bad take, though. It's not like his kids.
I mean, he's 20 years old. He's 20 years old and has made, 20 appearances for Lille so far? So I understand the take, but surely this is the guy that we are signing with the intention of being our next Caicedo immediately, right?
I don't think you're spending £25 million to loan him out, right? I think that's pretty. I think he'll bed in. Do you know what I mean? He's not going to come in and go right starting 11 and act like a prime Caicedo, right? He is going to need time. He's, like you said, he's young. He's coming from the French League One, and he will take time. But that's it, right? He needs time to adapt. The same with Igor. The same with some of these other new signings. You have to be careful with them. They're still young people, right? You're still 20, 21 years old, coming into the best league in the world, or the most competitive league in the world, whatever you want to call it, right? It is going to take time. So, but we know that. I don't think anyone's going to be shell shocked if he makes a couple of mistakes in those few games. It's just, who do we put alongside him so that those mistakes are at a minimum? And I think that's where I would be looking. But it's exciting. You get someone in of, I guess, that's highly regarded, I guess, and sort of, I mean, I'm going off a YouTube highlight reel at this point, but I think it's promising to an effect that we are linked with this person for a very long time, and it seems that we've actually got it over the line this time, which is promising.
Yeah, it sounds like, from James in the chat as well, like I've not even watched a YouTube clip on him. He said he looks great, but a wee bit messy once he gets the ball. If that doesn't, if they cloned Bissouma,
SY or SI? Because
no,
it's
just
the first
Y,
Messi,
no
I'd be
DI.
very happy.
Yeah, not that much. Like, that is exactly what I think everybody's takeaway was when Bissouma arrived. He looked really great winning the ball, and then recycling the ball, not so much. His first touch was a little bit dodgy. He just felt a little bit messy once he won the ball. And like, if they just cloned him from someone, like, that's a bit odd. It's a really weird take to have, considering like we literally signed Bissouma from Lille as well.
Who's now, by the way, basically the best defensive midfielder on current form in the Premier League.
Unbelievable. And I'm so happy to see it for him. So happy. Who would have known, like, putting a competently like manager that doesn't hate football like into a football team, like, would actually enable a player to look decent.
I do hope this starts to encourage other teams around the Premier League to hire managers that are out of the cookie cutter style template, and actually bring in people with novel ideas like De Zerbi's, like Ange Postecoglou and others around the league, as opposed to recycling crap. I think Man U's like a really good, and I love that they keep making the same mistakes, but I think everyone now looks, and you've seen in 3 games of Spurs playing under Ange Postecoglou, you've seen more positivity and more perspective change around a club, both from a sort of a persona and tactical standpoint that you've seen under the amount of time Ten Hag has been at Man U at the helm. And hopefully that acts as something, and we stop seeing these sort of Moyes-esque performances of stupid crap football, and we actually like play a beautiful game, which is what should actually be encouraged. But I do think James' point is a good one. Of course, we're not going to loan out a guy with spending this amount of money. I don't think that was James's point. I'm speaking for you here, obviously. But yes, as you guys both attested to, he's probably going to take maybe some time to get up to speed. Right, he's not going to be a finished product. We don't really buy the finished product for the most part. My biggest concern is, like, we've done the amount of money we've spent. The Sanchez and Verbruggen thing basically comes out in the wash because we fleeced Chelsea, right? And then really all you've actually done is once you've got rid of Caicedo and McAllister and you've brought in João Pedro, which no arguments there at all so far, and then Igor, who hasn't had a sort of sniff at game time yet and feels at the moment, maybe this will prove to be absolutely incorrect, but feels like more of a rotational depth signing more than anything else, but maybe he'll be a starter soon. So that's a long way of me saying, I hope our business doesn't end with just Belieber, because there's a lot of money sloshing around there that we haven't spent. We're still net at a lot. And it'd be nice to bring in more bodies than just like, oh, Belieber, business is done, and we'll sign a 17-year-old right back from Boca Juniors and let him stay there until January. Like, I hope that's not what happens.
Yeah, we need options, don't we? I don't think we're anywhere near done, really. I think we need 3 more, like Belieber included. Like, exactly, James, in the chat, we've talked about it ad nauseum. We need a freaking right back, like, end of. Like, we need that badly.
What else? Obviously, the right backs are given, but what are your other 2?
Belieber was one of them.
Right. Okay.
And then a fullback at depth, just in general, someone who can play either left or right back comfortably. Especially left. Like, we've got no backup for Estepinian right now. Like, if we do sign that Argentinian lad from Boca, like, I'm actually fine with him staying there till January and like having Estepinian run out until then, and then giving him the chance to have a second half of the season where he is rotated out while this kid gets minutes in like games where we don't need Estepinian to play. / Tarek Lamptey playing there if necessary, because he looked really good before he crocked himself again at left back. But
yeah,
we're not even mentioned him at right back. Like, that's how bad it is. Like, what? Like, I know they're working on getting him fit, but it's, yeah, we need. And I mean, De Zerbi has now said he outright wants another attacker because Encito's.
Yeah, we need one. By the way, we do need one. Like, how much does your perspective change if Matoma goes down with an injury? How much does your perspective change on what the attack looks like? Because now
we're in big trouble, aren't we?
Yes, it's not good. Even though if you are excited about a Dingra, which I think we all are, but yeah, there's once you've got rid of who's gone out from the attack standpoint, because we got rid of Sarmiento. Ayer is more central mid
now, haven't we?
Yeah, but again, he was on the verge, right? It's I don't know. We need some more depth there as well.
Yeah. All right. Man of the match for the weekend. What a fun question when we got tanked 3-1. I'm going to go first because I'm stealing the easy one. Pascal Gross is getting my man of the match simply for breaking that goal scoring record. And for doing what he always does, single-handedly dragging us towards the finish line, kicking and screaming when we don't play at our best. It didn't work this time. That's okay. I would love to see him start at that 10 role a couple of times as opposed to Welbeck. I would much rather have had Saturday, for example, Dahoud and Gilmore and Gross in there instead of Welbeck and Ferguson. I think that would have offered a lot more coverage. But again, like Craig said, we can criticize world-class managers all we want on a podcast. That we don't do that. So for me, he's my man of the match. And what was really I think, Adam, you talked about it within like the first couple of minutes of even talking about the game. A really bad day at the office. Craig, what you got?
I'd say we'd be doing him a disservice if I didn't go for Gross as well. Like, there's really not a lot of options, to be honest. I think the sort of defunct man of the match is Estepinian, but we said he had a bad game. I just don't think many people stood out. I think there's a special mention for João Pedro that, you know, changed partially the the game as soon as he came on. We just looked a lot better. But yeah, it's Pascal Gross. I don't think it can be anyone else for me.
Webster for me. By the way, Antonio should have scored another goal like 70 something minutes in, because he just got the ball. Webster just refused to. She's got one man to mark, and he just didn't track him. And Antonio just like ran in behind and then shot it over, if you remember. So no, everyone was absolutely reprehensible apart from Pascal Gross. I'm saying
reprehensible.
They were awful.
It's
Like,
no holds barred right here.
It was pathetic. It was, in my opinion. I know Robin mentioned like I wasn't that bad if you defensive frailty. I don't think it was good anywhere. I don't think it was good enough anywhere, because even without the defensive frailties, the De Zerbi system is to score more than you concede, and we didn't even really like scoring for most of it. It was just not much creativity. Didn't play our game. Yeah, it was, but no one deserved it. Gross was the only shining light.
James in the chat, Antonio is off to Saudi. I haven't heard that. Have you guys?
No. You can feel free to.
I've heard a rumor of that, but maybe. I think it isn't it Al. Well, of course it's Al something. One of the clubs that's not the big one, not the top four that is trying to buy him. I think, but yeah.
Oh, really?
Good for him. Get final payday.
Yeah, that's like a MLS level signing, isn't it? Which is what those other teams are basically at, like in what they can spend.
Yeah, exactly.
More as not in level of quality. Those Saudi teams outside of that four are
Steven Gerrard's like
soccer at this point. Yeah,
backup silly team that's like intended, like designed to come 5th or 6th in the league. Yeah. Go on, mate, have a go.
Yeah, if they don't, their stadium becomes an execution place instead.
So we're going to cut that.
No, we're not.
Word from our sponsor.
Stephen in the chat, it is odd to think that De Zerbi still hasn't even had a full season yet. I agree with you on that, to be fair. Like, it's not even been a calendar year since De Zerbi arrived at the Albion. There's still a lot of work to be done on his end in terms of what we're playing like. That interview that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was really interesting, that we play most identifiable to his soul, but not his ideas, which is really interesting. I suspect that as time goes on, those ideas will be enforced. There was quite an interesting statement, and we'll leave on this one. I think there's so many other things I want to talk about. There's so much stuff going on this week, like the autograph decision that now fans can no longer.
Should we touch on that? Should we?
Yeah, let's. Because I think that's one of the most boneheaded decisions I've ever seen from the out. Like, there are constantly dumb decisions coming out that feel like fan not customer, customer not fan, whatever. But you cannot be signing players like Mitoma and reaping the benefits of having 3,000 Japanese fans coming into the Amex every weekend, and then like carrots sticking them with then now saying you can no longer have any opportunity to meet him, even though you will wait patiently and politely for him at the final whistle. It's something that has always happened. And to then change it to kids only is the most bizarre choice I've ever seen in my life. Now this is just me. I couldn't give a flying monkeys whether I ever got an autograph from a player in my entire life. I don't care if I ever met one. I don't care if I ever got an autograph with one. Would it be cool to like shake Lewis Dunk's hand and be like, "You're great, mate"? Yeah, cool, great. That'd be cool. But like, would I care about it if I didn't? No. Like, I wouldn't. It's never crossed my mind that would be a thing.
Are you just targeting me with a signed jersey right at the shirt, literally in the background right there?
There's a lot of people that do it, like in the same way that people are train spotters and bird watchers. People take autograph collection really seriously. No. I'm talking about the autograph collection.
Character attack, assassination.
There are people that have books out there that, like, just because it isn't my interest, I would be fascinated to read those books that those people put together, because they put some work. Oh boy. There has been, like, some of these people have fascinating like books of autographs they've got from people and the stories they can tell from it. And I would listen to those people and look at that book with genuine interest. Would I want to be the person doing it? Absolutely not. But to decide that those people are now categorically never going to be able to meet those players in a club sanctioned effort is just so utterly beyond me. Like, I cannot just fathom the stupidity that has come from that decision.
So
that's my thought on it.
But what is, I'm out of the loop. Obviously, I'm very far away. But what is the genuine reason for this to stop? Is it
safety?
Is it merch and touting and stuff like that?
So they come out of the East Stand. People wait at the East Stand. I don't go. I'm either like before when I would come over and visit, or when I'm now living here. I don't go to the East Stand. I stay in the North Stand for an hour, have beer, wait until the train lines go, and then get on the train and go home. I don't even travel around to the East Side. But a lot of people, kids and parents especially, go around to the East Side, and now a lot of Japanese fans will head over to that East Side and wait for the players to come out to get their selfies and their autographs and all this sort of stuff. The club has said there's now too many people, so it's not safe. And there's a lot of people who are turning up with 10 shirts, 10 footballs, and getting them to sign 10 of them and popping them on eBay the next day, right? We've seen that, Craig, you especially, in pro wrestling, where people are accosting wrestlers at the airport at 5 a.m. off of a red eye with 15 programs for the next event, and they're throwing them all on eBay the next day. Like, CM Punk did a whole freaking pipe bomb on this nonsense. Like, it's a problem that's pervaded athletes around the world for a long time, and like, it's baffling. And Stephen, I'm not even going to.
No, that's why I'm chuckling. Stephen's amusing me. Just putting.
He's on fire at the minute. I can't even. That one's too much for me. I'm not even going to air it.
You made an assassination joke.
Yeah, I did. But that one's just mean. Mean spirited. For anybody who wants to know what he said, head over to 1 hour and 11 minutes on the timestamp and just see him being mean. But yeah, for me, the cynical side of me is that they love doing their auctions when they can to sell off signed merchandise, and they take any idea that they may have those items devalued as the bigger problem. That's their biggest issue, a loss of monetary income and revenue. So they're nailing it on the head here. Why they've arbitrarily decided to make it now kids only, and they have to go through like a random lottery, is like probably my bigger issue than them making the decision at all. Because there's a lot of people that will never get to do that now that would want to.
So it's control, isn't it? Right, that's pretty much what it is. I think you can't really, and it's what I thought it was. Right, is that people are whacking 50 shirts on eBay and stuff like that, and that sort of stuff. But you can't say photos only, please, can you? So there's like a zero tolerance, isn't there, in that respect? And yeah, a club built on community and being, different or sort of all encompassing. It seems like a backward step, doesn't it?
Why can't
maybe that's why they took community out of community stadium booths.
Yeah, it's gone. Why can't they just be like, oh, we're still going to do that, our players will still come out, but we're getting too much crowding. Like, they're not going to sign anything. You can wave, you do all that, you can get a selfie. Like, okay, great. But yeah, I think when you're a young kid or a virgin like me, it's nice to have be able to interact with the players and have those, especially when you're a young kid. Like, that's what they dream of, this stuff. They want to. These are their heroes. You can't create celebrities out of players, which is what they are now, and then cut off all access. That defeats. It's like going to saying we're not going to do any interviews at the Oscars or the Golden Globes. It's sort of part of it. It's sort of part of the whole thing. Yes, it feels a bit selfish.
One of my favorite childhood memories ever in history is having a picture taken on some Sony Ericsson phone that is forever lost to the void with Michelle Kuipers. Like, that's Michelle Kuipers, by the way. That's not where we're at now. Like, and that was like, as a kid at like 11 or whatever it was, like, I literally buzzing for like 4 weeks. Like, I was the happiest kid ever. Like, I was just unbelievably happy. Like,
it means a lot.
Yeah. Like, nowadays, now don't get me wrong. And before Adam kicks off, would I buy a signed shirt at a reasonable price? Absolutely. Like, I'm here for that sort of stuff. am I going to stand outside the East Stand in the pissing rain for like Billy Gilmore to write something on a piece of paper? You literally couldn't pay me money to go and do that. Doesn't interest me at all.
Yeah.
But to have them, like for me, like you've got to, if you're going to take it away, I think there's that perfect like duo, right? Do it of exactly what you'd say. We are not signing anything at these went after the game. We will not sign anything. We'll pose for selfies. We'll shake your hand. We'll say hello, but we are not signing a thing. And we will put together a random draw where 20 of you will get drawn to meet the players if you would like to and get autographs, and another 20 of you can book it. Like, you know how kids can pay to be mascots? Like, it's all paid these days. Like,
Oh, you have to pay now? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
What a
Like,
scam.
those Japanese fans will pay that in a heartbeat. Like, not even a question. Like, not a question at all. Like, there's a fella, he's in the Stateside Seagulls, Jack Craig, Amir. Like, he paid like for a box because he knew there'll be a chance to meet Jahanbakhsh. Like, that's like, he paid for a box to be able to meet it. Like, these people will do it. Like, and it seems like we're like cutting our nose off to spite our face because that's a revenue stream as well. Like, blows my mind.
Well, they just want the people to sign up for that thing where they watch the players come out in the weird tube.
Or the
like,
tunnel club.
Yeah, like some aquarium.
This podcast's going to go on. This is going to go on forever, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like we're just never ending. Because there was something else I was going to bring up as well, and I forgot now. What it
In
was.
my defense, one quick thing, I absolutely wouldn't go and hunt the player. This was when they did that thing in the US. They came up to the stand and were just like, "All right, we'll sign some stuff," and that's easy for me. As long as they don't have to go out my way for it, that's perfect. But again, the people that do want to, not the weird like men with neck beards that want to just like get 50 things signed. Like, yeah, stamp that out. Maybe they just do it. Like, if you get an autograph, you've got to be under 15 or something. We'll just have the kids do it.
Well, I mean, you don't even need to do that. It's just one item. It's that simple.
Yeah.
I've seen them before. Like when WWE put on events over here, and I've gone to them, and they have meet and greets. Like, and I'm walking past that every sign on these meet and greets as you walk by are really clear of like 2 items or less that we will sign. Like, no more than that. Like, and people are queuing up with their like figures and shit. But like, it's the easiest way. Like, they're not going to get upset because they're not going to have to. They know it's 2 items or less. That's it.
Well, there's also no safety concern with no one's going to start on the wrestlers.
Yeah, true. Well, you would
where someone could have lamp.
The women though, to be fair, some of the stuff you see online there is terrifying.
Didn't you go to the wrestling yesterday?
I did.
Why are they performing? Are they not in solidarity with the writers' strike?
No,
given their actors.
Do you know what? It's a really good question.
They are. It's not real. I hate to crack you.
No, because they're independent contractors, right? Like, I'm surprised they're not. That's probably
Uber
why.
CEO trying to get a get out here. No, they're independent.
No, I would assume why, because they're independent contractors and wrestlers have been talking a long time about unionizing. Like, and Craig will know, like, there's been a lot of problems with the fact that wrestlers have been quite taken advantage of with contracts and stuff, because for a long time there was only WWF/E. Like, there was no one else for a long time after WCW that, like, they basically were treated like shit. Like, it was like basically the equivalent of like the working man's 0-hour contract. Like, it was terrible. And there was a lot of talk about unionizing. And now I'm thinking about it, like, why didn't they just join that? Because do you know what? They probably wouldn't be accepted in. That's why, because that they would probably look down on it. I'm going to look into it now, though. You've got me thinking.
A slap to the face.
Good idea.
That doesn't touch.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter though, does it?
Yeah.
They're used to that bump.
Context.
All right, we're at 1:20 now. We have gone on a long time for a game that was so bad to watch. But
we talked for about 10 minutes about the game, to be fair. So.
Yeah. There was another thing I wanted to bring up, and I forgot what it was now, so it couldn't have been that important. Because the autograph stuff just went way off, because that really annoys me. What else is there? Oh, Europa League draw this Friday.
Oh yeah, so an annoying time though, because we were thinking about recording something or doing something live, but it's like early,
like midday UK time, if I remember.
Yeah, so it's like what 6 a.m. for you, Craig? Is that?
Yeah, I'm no use to anyone at that early in the morning. So.
No, yeah, that's
I wouldn't be
maybe
either.
we'll do some. Maybe we'll think about doing something. If not, we can chat about it after the Newcastle game, right?
Yeah.
Well,
like a combo.
Alternative idea. How about we do it on that day, a Twitter space, an X space, to everybody listening at deadline. Let's run an X space as the transfer deadline shuts.
Oh,
on
is it Friday?
And use it to also recap the Europa League draw. I believe it's the 1st of September at 11 o'clock. The transfer window closes.
11 p.m. Friday, the 1st of September. Yeah. Yeah.
So we
okay,
could go
that's a good
live
idea.
there. That's a nice time for you guys. Should be done with work probably. It's 11 o'clock at night for me, so I'm not going to be doing anything else, am I?
The guy's pulling back the curtain on Together BHA, eh?
Are we live still? I don't. Is this
We are.
part of the show?
Yeah.
Okay,
We are.
good. Yeah. I'm sure everyone loves this. Yeah, content. Everyone. We get paid extra by the sponsor if we go over 1 hour 20, so we just had to stretch it out. We don't.
We don't. But just to reiterate, we are sponsored by Green King Sports, and they will be showing Brighton games at Green King Sports. We will be televised next week against Newcastle, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
They do have over 900 sports pubs across the UK. So whether you are in Brighton itself and you're not able to make it due to those wonderful train strikes, or you're in Birmingham, or you're up in Borough where Robin is, you can catch every single minute of the action if you want to. Anyway, keep an eye out during this season for events, offers, content, and competitions. Some could be Europa League based. So keep an eye out for those that put you closer to the action. So keep an eye out. Pop into your local Green King next week for the Newcastle game, and just drink yourself to death if we play poorly, I suppose.
Don't die, because then we lose our point.
Yes, don't die.
Yeah.
But I think we're pretty much good to roll at this point, aren't we? I don't think we've
give
got
the poor
anything
listeners
else.
their lives back after this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, fellas. We will probably see you all on Friday for a X space, which is just so stupid. And then we will see you again post Newcastle, of course, to talk about the transfer recap, talk about the Europa League, talk about the Newcastle game, and head into the international break.
It's going to be an exciting week.
A lot going on.
Love it.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it as always.